Hello, everyone. We'll just give people a few minutes to join. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today and on time. My name is Amber Bennett, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of Re.Climate, the Center for Climate Communication and Engagement at Carleton University. Yay! Over the next hour, we're going to share a bit more about Re.Climate. We'll introduce our team and talk about some of the opportunities to get involved. We will have questions and opportunities. We have some time set aside for questions at the end. And I just want to say, in a true sign of the times, our team is actually all sitting together in the same room. And at the same time, we're beaming into all of your screens and workplaces across the country. So I would like to encourage you to introduce yourself and your organization, and also the lands that you're joining us from. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the lands that we are gathered here today are the lands of the Algonquin Nation. And in the spirit of respect and truth, I'd also like to honor the lands of the Mi'kmaq people that have cared for my ancestors for many generations, and also to pay respect and honor the lands of the Blackfoot people, which are the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani nations, and the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda nations, and the Métis nations that care for and sustain my family today. So while we wait, please take a moment, use the chat, introduce yourselves, and we'll allow people to join. Very excited to say that we had 475 people register for today's webinar, and that we have people joining from really one end of the country to the other. We have people from every single province, every territory. We have leaders, we have grandparents, we have policymakers, communicators, scientists, we have funders who have made our work possible, researchers, healthcare professionals, union leaders, and really, as we know, climate change connects to everything that we care about, and that is really reflected in terms of the people who have expressed interest today. So again, before I hand it over, I just want to say that we'll be covering a lot of ground. We're happy to share the presentation with you afterwards, and we also have some follow-up opportunities for you. So we will be using the Q&A function for questions, and you can see that at the bottom of your screen, your Zoom window. And so feel free to ask questions throughout the session. You can direct your questions to a specific panelist, or you can leave it to us to facilitate that. And then we do have about 10 minutes at the end for just to direct for questions. And then also feel free to use the chat function if you wanted to kind of say hi to each other, or to share information with each other. So I am really delighted to introduce a woman that for many of you hardly needs introducing, Cara Pike. And Cara is the Executive Director of Re.Climate. She is the founder and also part-time Executive Director of Climate Access, a US-based nonprofit focused on building political and public support for climate action. She is a pioneer and a leading thinker in climate communications, and she regularly advises governments, agencies, nonprofit organizations, and she has been absolutely instrumental in conceptualizing and leading Re.Climate to fruition. So over to you, Cara.
Thank you so much, Amber, and to everyone for joining. I'm really excited that we're launching Re.Climate today after 2 years of hard work to get to this point. And the team at Climate Access is very happy to have contributed to this initiative. Well, Climate Access is based in the US. I'm from Ontario, and originally was fortunate to spend 20 years in the States before returning home. So I'm excited to leverage lessons learned from the US context, as well as from my work in Canada over the past 15 years and bring it to bear to this effort. I'm also so grateful to have worked with Amber, Maria Granados, and Chris Hatch, along with Joanna Leffler, former executive director of the Clean Economy Fund, to incubate this effort. As Re.Climate and Climate Access are partner organizations, I'm going to act as ED for both as we build out this new initiative. So what is it that we're aiming to do? And if we could share the slides, that would be fantastic. So Canada has committed to cut emissions in half by 2030. And Canadians are really needed as partners in the transformational change required to achieve this goal, as well as to prepare for the impacts that we're already facing. We know that at its heart, climate change is a social change challenge. We have been very focused on the policy and science, which, while is critical, it's meant we've largely ignored the social change required to curb the climate crisis. That's what Re.Climate aims to address. Re.Climate is a nonpartisan public institution housed at Carleton University's Sustainable Energy Research Center. We are connected to both the Faculty of Arts and Social Science and the Faculty of Public Affairs, as well as the Carleton Climate Commons and researchers across the country. Re.Climate was created to support and build climate communication and engagement capacity across a broad range of sectors and organizations. Making real change requires that we listen to people, what concerns them, what moves them, what they care about, and give people a path to shape the world they want. Some of the things that are really underlying our work is the belief that public engagement is essential in tackling climate change. We can make technological advances, create new laws and policies, but none of it will go as far as it needs to without active engagement and buy-in from citizens. Researchers, practitioners, and organizers need a space to work together. Climate researchers and communicators need space to access research, share insights, innovate, and collaborate with their peers. This approach is essential to overcoming impasses in climate communications and developing new approaches that engage people and prompt public support for climate action. Our values, not just the facts, must underpin climate communication and engagement. People's views and actions are shaped by values, worldviews, peers, and cultural norms. To engage more Canadians in climate action, we must listen and respond to what moves them, address what they care about, and empower those often excluded from climate conversations. Active participation from people across the country is essential. Our work supports communicators to promote climate concern and action as the norm, increase understanding of the urgency and relevance of climate change, overcome polarization to build broad public support, and encourage active participation in decision-making, including those most impacted by climate change and an energy transition. So how did we get here to this point today? Re.Climate grew out of a collaboration between the Climate Narratives Initiative, led by Amber Bennett, Climate Access, and La Communauté de Pratique en Communication Climatique au Québec, led by Leila Kopti, and the collaborative work of the Climate Commons at Carleton University, led by Dr. Barbara Leakey and Dr. Chris Russell. The seeds were first sown in 2019 through the work of the Clean Economy Fund, championed by Joanna Leffler and Environment Funders Canada, including by the late and highly regarded Peggy Dover, and a group of very dedicated funders that came together to commission new research, which was shared through a series of workshops across the country. These first 5 workshops and the 450 people that took part kicked off the network that is part of what we now call Re.Climate. We're building on foundational research. To develop this model, Dr. Louise Comeau, who will share more later, and our team conducted more than 100 stakeholder interviews, sought advice from more than 20 international organizations with similar mandates, commissioned 10 expert research reports, and drew feedback from a breadth of practitioners in the field, as well as piloting a number of new initiatives to test the model. Informed, relevant experience. Our model brings together more than a decade of climate communication and engagement experience through climate access and the climate narratives initiatives in Canada and our partners in Quebec. Established relationships. We have long-lasting relationships with similar institutions around the world. This will allow us to benefit from an international community of researchers and practitioners and contribute our insights as well. I really want to honor those who have made this possible, providing their guidance. Joanna Leffler at Clean Economy Fund, and now Eric Campbell, who's the current executive director, Louise Comeau, Annie Berube, Lauren Johnson, Mark Kabaj, Peggy Dover, Thea Silver, Devika Shah, Pat Letizia, Meredith Herb, James Meadowcroft, and Sarah Crocker. The Clean Economy Fund and Donner Canadian Foundation provided seed funding to develop Re.Climate. Our first major funder for the new initiative is the McConnell Foundation, and they have been joined by the Ivy Foundation and Energy Transition Fund. We are ever so grateful for their support. So I want to just share a little bit about what we've been doing to date and where we're going, and then I'll hand it off to others to provide a little bit more detail. So since 2020, we've worked with a multitude of partners to research, test, and develop content that builds Canadian climate communication capacity. In our pilot, we published climate opinion research summary reports, a national media analysis, our climate communication playbook, and hosted many workshops and webinars. Examples include how to engage women on climate action, conducting an analysis of public opinion research and what it means for climate communication and engagement, and developing a playbook on how to talk to Canadians about energy transition and climate change based on message testing. We'll share a little bit more about how you can get involved in what we're doing, but just to lay out what things are going to look like over the next little bit. We will be, we're starting with a small team that will be growing, but it consists of many of Canada's leading climate communication experts. Over the next year, we'll be scaling our partnerships, building out the staff and financial foundation. We'll do this in conjunction with our network, and we'll be building a governing council and program committee to inform the work. Some of the themes for our programming include really leaning into the energy transition. How do we talk about the pathway forward? Local climate activation. How do we involve people in climate action, planning and preparing for change in their communities and their lives? Climate and health, including addressing the role of gas in climate change as well as impacting health. Looking at ways to overcome polarization and misinformation. We also want to hold space for your priorities and what's important and value to you. So you'll be hearing from us in terms of a survey so we can really get that input. I want to underscore that equity really is underpinning everything we do. We have experience and are committed to developing strategies that includes those most impacted by climate change and an energy transition, yet who are often not involved in decision-making processes when we're assessing risks and coming up with the climate solutions that we need. So I'm gonna now move to introducing our team who will take it away from there. So we unfortunately couldn't have them with us today, but we're so happy to have Dr. James Meadowcroft as an advisor to our project. He is a professor in the School of Public Policy and Administration at Carleton University, where he has held a Tier 1 Canada Research Chair in Governance for Sustainable Development. James will act as a project advisor in his role as the academic chair for the Sustainable Energy Research Center in which we're housed. And then Dr. Chris Rushell, who's one of our academic directors. He's also an associate professor in the School of Journalism and Communication at Carleton University. Chris's work focuses on political inaction, action around climate change and its effects. He's also the editor of the Canadian Journal of Communication. Chris, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kara. Great start. As Kara mentioned, I work in the School of Journalism and Communication, where I research and teach classes on climate communication, usually with an emphasis on questions of social change, social norms, and societal transformation. So I'm really pleased to be an academic director at this new Communication and Public Engagement Center and to be involved in reimagining and expanding how research can inform climate action across Canada. As all the people here, so many of you, I think are aware, residents in this country, they know enough, they care enough for climate action to proceed more quickly and effectively and inclusively. And so I'm thrilled to be partnered with everyone here, now all of you, to ensure this happens. So my role and goal is to keep that ambition at the forefront of what we do as a research community and as co-collaborators with everyone here. So you'll see me again in a few minutes when I share some first steps in how we hope to push forward with our engagement lab. But first, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Barbara Leckie, a professor in English and the comparative study of literature, art, and culture in Carleton. Barbara has written many brilliant things on the role of rhetoric, images, and narrative in advancing climate action. So over to you, Barbara.
Thank you so much, Chris. And hello, everybody. I too am so happy to be here with this great team and with all of you at the webinar. I am Barbara Leckie. I am an academic director along with Chris of the Re.Climate. And my work looks at climate change, rhetoric, and narrative in the context of literary and cultural studies. And so it's a different angle than some of the others. And my focus is on storytelling and narrative. I teach in this area, I do research in this area, and I've been very active on climate action in this context too. I now want to turn to Maria and introduce Maria Granados, Lead Resource and Training Hub. Maria supports training, events, and communities of practice focused on communicating about climate change and energy transition in Canada. She also provides research support for Re.Climate's key research and resource publications.
Thanks, Barbara. Hi, everybody. My name is Maria Granados. I will be the Resource and Training Hub lead. So you'll get lots of emails from me with upcoming information on future events, training, webinars, and also communities of practice that you can join. So you'll hear more about that in a moment. But I'd like to introduce Amber Bennett, our Deputy Director. So Amber is one of Canada's top climate communication strategists and capacity builders. Amber works with groups across the country, bridging the gap between research and practice. She led the groundbreaking Alberta Narratives Project and supported much of the foundational work to pilot and build Re.Climate. Over to you, Amber.
Thanks, Maria. Yeah, so as Maria mentioned, I will act as the Deputy Director for Re.Climate, and I imagine that will mean we'll be doing a lot of many things all at the same time. But obviously, my passion is bringing research and practice together, and really looking forward to working with groups in many of the ways that we have been over the last couple of years, and to be working with this amazing team. So thank you. I would like to hand this over now to Dr. Louise Comeau. And Dr. Comeau, who often needs no introduction for many of the people who work in this space as well. One moment here. Yes, okay, I wanted to get her proper bio. So Louise is an independent researcher and campaign director at the Conservation Council of New Brunswick's Climate Change Solutions Program. She has over 30 years experience analyzing and developing climate change policy, communications, and solution-related programming for environmental groups. She holds a doctorate in environmental management focused on environmental ethics and behavior change from the University of New Brunswick, where she's also an honorary research associate. So thank you so much, Louise, both for the work that you've done to date, the work that we'll do together, and over to you.
Thank you.
Well, the first thing I wanted to say was, from my perspective, today is the celebration of the rise of social science. Having worked on climate change for over 30 years, this issue's really been dominated by technology discussions, economic discussions, political discussions, and we really need to shift from, the foundation of our natural sciences and understanding the physics of climate change, the impacts and the risks, but now to bring in the social scientists in terms of the shift to action and implementation as we try to slow climate change. And what's in our way? Am I supposed to? No. Sorry about that. I was told to unmute myself, but that was wrong. So let me just point out a couple of the things that I think are essential as we think about Re.Climate and the activities that we're, I hope, about to really undertake for all of us. The big one is that we do know we've got the population aware of climate change. We know that they're concerned, but they really lack a sense of agency around what they can do, the actions that can be taken, which actions work best, and whether or not their contribution to those actions are effective. And we've got to get through that process. There's the social norming aspect of that, the storytelling and so on. But we've also got to bring in not just the communications academics and disciplines, but also social psychology, environmental sociology, and sociology more broadly, and so on. And so part of what I hope to contribute is helping to sustain not only our growing academic network, but a growing practitioners network that come from those fields as well. So it's a very exciting day to go from an idea to full on. Here we are. And why don't I hand it back to Maria to take us through the rest of the agenda.
Yes, thank you so much, Louise. I would also like to take a moment here to introduce our Quebec colleagues, Leila Copti and Manon Dubois. So Leila founded Copticom Strategy and Public Relations in 2011 and has led the team as president. And then Manon Dubois has led the communications and mobilization teams for national NGOs and is now the leader of the Comité de Pratique on Communication Climatique, which I will tell you more about them in a moment here. But just to begin, I wanted to share a little bit more information about the resources and training hub. So that is the work that I'll be overseeing. The goal of the training hub is really to connect with our network of over 1,700 climate influencers through networking, information, resources, training, and peer learning. And it's designed to support you and support practitioners. So our goal is to facilitate knowledge mobilization, facilitate capacity building, and enable connectivity through our offerings, which will include expert webinars, workshops and trainings, research summaries, reports, and case studies. You'll see blogs and newsletters coming into your inboxes, facilitated communities of practice, and we'll also host one of the first climate communication conference and awards in Canada here. Good things come to those who wait. So you'll find all of these resources and more information on our website, which is live now, but the resource and training hub section will come in the new year. And in the meantime, you can follow our work by subscribing to our e-newsletter or finding us on LinkedIn and by visiting reclimate.ca. So I'm just going to share some of our offerings that we have for the upcoming year. So in December, we have an exciting workshop to look forward to. So we're working on the Building Support for Bold Climate Policy panel, where leading communicators will share their thoughts on Canada's opportunity to pave the way for strong climate action nationally and globally as the first country to put a limit on emissions. So you'll see more information from that soon on how to register. In January, we have who Albertans are and aren't, and what that means for climate communicators, where we will share and discuss recent audience segmentation research that we've been working on. February, going to be a busy month, but there's lots to look forward to. So in February, we have a listening session for researchers and academics. So in this call, we'll think about how to bring together researchers and practitioners and what that means for working together. We'll have a communications workshop for Alberta communities of practice. So this workshop will be an opportunity to gather and work with the insights that we've gathered over the last few months in a hands-on way. Then we'll also hear from Dr. Louise Camo on why wind energy projects fail. So that's a webinar that shares the results of a year-long case study of the factors influencing social and community acceptance of renewable energy projects. In March, we'll have our What Canadians Really Think About Climate Change, which is our annual roll-up of Canadian public opinion research. And then finally, we'll also have our media analysis report, which is a follow-up to our 2020 media analysis report, examining how climate and energy issues are covered by the media and what that means for communicators. Currently ongoing, we also have an energy transition community of practice, which is a space for communication strategists working on supply side issues in Canada to share and discuss and tackle pressing communication challenges. So this group meets monthly, and if you're interested in joining, you can reach out to me via email. It's maria@reclimate.ca, but I'll also put it in the chat. And then finally, I'll just once again say that if you want to stay in the loop on what we're doing, just sign up for our newsletter, and I will send all of that into your inboxes. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Leila and Manon.
Hello, everyone. Very pleased to meet you today, finally, for this launch after all those years. Really, congratulations. So some of you may already be familiar with the Communauté de pratique en communication climatique, which we consider to be Re.Climate's francophone sister in Quebec. So La Communauté de pratique is coordinated by Copticom, a strategy and public relations firm that is entirely dedicated to environmental protection, the climate emergency, and the fight against social inequalities, and graciously led by the Foundation en Environnement et Développement Durable in Quebec. So La Communauté de pratique was launched in 2020, almost 3 years ago. And I'm proud to say that today, the Communauté de pratique includes over 330 active members from across Quebec, from diverse sectors and organizations, including environmental and social justice NGOs, unions, public officials from municipalities and provincial government, scientists, researchers from all over Quebec. We have also representatives from the health sector and the philanthropy, youth activists also, and citizen groups who all communicate a little or a lot, but always with a great determination on climate-related issues. And we're very pleased to be here with you today to celebrate the launch of Re.Climate and to work alongside you all to help strengthen the movement from coast to coast in English and en français. And I also want to take a minute to thank the partners who made this all possible. Here in Quebec, for sure, the Clean Economy Fund, the Trottier Foundation, the McConnell Foundation, the ECO Foundation as well, and also the Quebec government, which included La Communauté de pratique as one of the main pillars of its new climate mobilization strategy, announced a few weeks ago during COP27. Their support of La Communauté sends a clear signal as to the value and importance of the work of climate communicators and mobilizer, and endorses our shared belief that we need to work together in order to be more effective. Now, I'd like to take a minute to introduce to you my colleague Manon Dubois, a senior advisor at Copticom, who is leading the Communauté de pratique in Quebec, who will speak a bit more about the resources offered to members of la communauté. For nearly 20 years, Manon has led the communications and mobilization teams for national NGOs. During her 11-year tenure at the David Suzuki Foundation, she plays a pivotal role in building a francophone community of over 100,000 supporters and establishing the Future Ground Network, le Réseau Demain le Québec, a network supporting and connecting hundreds of environmental grassroots groups across Quebec and Canada. And she joined Copticom as senior advisor in September and now leads the work of the Communauté de pratique en communication climatique. Manon, over to you.
Merci, Leila. Hello to everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you today for the launch of Re.Climate. As Leila mentioned, La Communauté de pratique was launched in 2020, just a few months shy of the start of the pandemic. Despite the obvious challenges, we were able to adapt and find creative ways of connecting with our 330 plus members and offering them a host of resources and tools to help them optimize their climate communications and mobilization efforts. These resources for us in Quebec include a daily media watch. So we send an email every day, very early in the morning, to our members with a roundup of the most relevant news articles and clips on climate change and climate-related issues. Thematic workshops. So for example, this past fall, we organized webinars on government relations, on how to communicate efficiently on COP27. We had a webinar on a study of COVID and its impacts on climate action in Quebec, and an upcoming webinar as well on how to communicate efficiently on COP15 and how to talk about the biodiversity crisis in relation to the climate crisis. So we also offer training opportunities with experts from various fields, including traditional media, social media, researchers in sociology, communications, etc. We have a private Facebook group where folks can share relevant information and just simply connect with one another on a daily basis. We have a shared cloud where we post resources and we provide exclusive access as well to the latest surveys and studies relating to Quebecers' perceptions on climate change. And when possible, we do offer opportunities to connect in person several times a year at more informal gatherings and also during an annual meeting with our members, because we do believe that the human element of connecting is also essential to creating strong links and strengthen the movement as a whole. In the coming year, we also look forward to introducing an info line where folks will be able to get a more personalized advice and recommendations relating to their climate work. And I should mention that the Communauté de pratique operates on a peer-based model, so that the content is largely validated by a volunteer advisory committee, and members have a whole lot of opportunities to suggest themes for upcoming webinars. So we really want to avoid that top-down approach and make sure that we're co-creating with the members, which in turn makes the community more relevant to them. And we are also looking at offering more tools and resources to ensure that we collectively communicate more efficiently on climate-related social justice issues, because obviously we know that these issues are interconnected and intersectional. And that, in a nutshell, is La Communauté de pratique en communication climatique. Everything is always longer in French. And we're so excited to be able to share best practices and resources with you all at Re.Climate and learning from all the great things that you and we will be doing together. So thanks for having us. I look forward to working with you all. And I think I am passing it over now to Dr. Chris Russell and Dr. Barbara Leckie. Chris is an associate professor at the School of Journalism and Communication at Carleton University. I think it was mentioned a little earlier, but his work focuses on political action or inaction around climate change and its effects. He's also editor of the Canadian Journal of Communication. And Dr. Barbara Leckie is professor in the Department of English and the Institute for the Comparative Study of Literature, Art, and Culture at Carleton University. She's written extensively about the role of rhetoric, images, and narrative in advancing climate action, including her most recent book, Climate Change Interrupted. Hello, Chris and Barbara, over to you.
Merci, Manon. Hi again. So just a few words on our engagement lab. It's going to be a lively site. I hope, that responds and evolves with the needs of its participants, much in the ethos of what you heard Manal speaking about. It's intended to place research in context of convivial conversation that can reflect our differences in ways that will enable and strengthen rather than delay or polarize climate action. So in this respect, we're hoping to develop research through public forms of conversation and action to let practical problems and real world pressures shape what we do in a productive way, not in a hurried or overwhelmed way, and to expand the ability of others to perceive climate action is the way we're going to remake our collective future together. So a few things we have going on currently. We're working on questions of climate misinformation, to ask how we can overcome homophily and the polarization it sometimes can produce in digital networks. Those of you that have to run your social media accounts of your organizations probably think about this quite a bit. We want to examine how questions of truth and trust are interconnected and to begin pulling apart that relationship between trust in government and support for regulation, which is often and sometimes willfully misunderstood. We want to examine how feelings of authenticity often determine what and whether people circulate or respond to opportunities for engagement. And of course, the place that transparency plays in these feelings of authenticity and whether they're engaged and act or not. So I'm very happy to say we've just confirmed this. We're going to host our first public talk on some of these questions on January 13th. We'll get that up for you soon and make it available to you by Melissa Aronchek, who some of you will know from her work with the Climate Social Science Network. Finally, as it was mentioned on one of the slides that Maria shared, we're going to hold a listening session with interested researchers to hear more about what your needs are, how we can support them, and most importantly, how we can come together in new ways. As Louise mentioned, this isn't a problem just of communication, and certainly not just for communication scholars. All of us know something about this problem, and so we're really hoping we can take what we know and put it together in new and effective combinations. So you'll hear a bit more about that in coming weeks, or if you don't want to wait, just ping myself or Barbara or Maria. Let me conclude by saying we're also very happy to have Dr. Ghada Al-Rashid as a public engagement specialist joining us and to be partnering with the institution that she was formerly a co-director at, Align Lab at Carleton, which excels in helping people use alternative media for inclusive forms of public and civic engagement. I think I'll stop there and hand it to you, Barbara.
Thanks, Chris. Hi again. We're really lucky at Carleton to have a number of incredible climate change researchers across all disciplines. And we have an especially robust group of researchers, grad students, and undergrad students working in the humanities and social sciences specifically. Over the past decade or so, we've had many collaborations and conversations that have grown out of the Climate Commons in particular, which is a working group focused on the social sciences and arts approaches to the climate crisis. And the topics have ranged from climate storytelling to climate grief to climate and public engagement. And we're so excited that with Re.Climate, we can do more and expand the range of topics we can address. As Chris noted, we'll be talking about misinformation and focusing on that in the coming months, but we're also eager to get feedback from others in terms of things you'd like to see us do and pursue in the engagement lab. And as Chris also noted, please just contact me or Chris or any of the team if you have ideas or want to be involved in any way. Maria noted too that the resource and training hub will be communicating the work we're doing, and you can go there to get like updates on what we've done, what we have planned to do. And that will just sort of unfold as we go. Thanks so much. And I will turn it back to Amber.
It's hard to know where to look. Well, thank you, Barbara. I'm going to wrap up this part of the webinar by just talking a little bit about our strategic services. And so for many of you who we've worked with, it's a very similar approach. Our team will work one-on-one with organizations to mobilize and apply what we know about audiences and approaches. We'll fill the gaps where needed in terms of research or in terms of better understanding what tools or what approaches may be necessary. And then in order to really inform and develop evidence-based strategies that reach new audiences. So our goal really is to work with hand in hand from the design part to the evaluation part with organizations, and to better understand what works and what doesn't work in practice, to gain real world insights. And then we'll be sharing those insights back with the broader community through our research and training hub. As we know, research is only as good as we apply it, and as we mobilize it and translate it for use. So in the past and moving forward, we've worked with all levels of government, right, from local to national government, universities. We've worked with small grassroots organizations, national networks, and everything in between. And so we'll be continuing to move forward with partnerships and working one-on-one with groups. At full scale, our hope is that we'll have 10 to 15 of those partnerships per year, and a special focus on organizations or communities that are best positioned to reach and engage new audiences. And our team will continue to track public opinion, media, and relevant research, and then publish those insights in a way that offers recommendations and practical advice for practitioners in the field. And a key component of the work that we'll be doing through this is evaluation. So really trying to synthesize and translate what we're learning so that we can share that for the benefit of the broader network. So that really kind of wraps up this part of the webinar, and we'd love to open it up now for some questions if you have them. I think my colleagues have been busy answering questions in the background, but I'm going to pause I'm going to stop sharing, and we'll be on screen. And so I encourage you to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. And it looks like we have a couple here, and Patricia Lane, no, that one's answered. All right, so it kind of looks like we have many of the questions answered already. Okay, while we're doing this, Kara has suggested that I just clarify how you sign up, how you can stay in touch. And so we are launching kind of the first phase of our website today. You can find that at Re.Climate.ca. And through that, there is an opportunity. You can see if you scroll to the bottom where you can subscribe. And so you can sign up for our newsletter there. That also will put you on a list that you'll receive information about upcoming events and, et cetera. So the best way to stay in touch with us is to subscribe through the website. We'll also be active on LinkedIn, and so you can follow our profile there as well. We'll be sending out a synopsis of and this presentation after the session, and that also includes our emails. And if you have a specific person that you would like to be in contact with, you can do so that way. So it looks like we have a question here for you, Barbara. Do you have any examples of interactive live performances to engage on climate action? I'm not sure if that's a personal question.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, it's a cultural studies question, so it fits right in. There's been a lot of work with the Climate Museum in New York. They've done a bunch of art pieces recently. Interactive studies, that they probably were interactive. And I know Bruno Latour had a bunch of things that he was doing around climate action. There were huge, big art objects. They were actually, well, anyway, I won't go into my critique of them right now, but they exist. And others may come to mind. Do you know any, Chris?
Nothing really to add to that. No.
There is a lot out there, and it would be interesting to put together a list.
Great, thank you. One for you, Kara, from Eric Campbell. if I'm an ENGO that is already engaged in a variety of climate communications, what are the ways that Re.Climate will support my work?
Great. Well, first of all, we'd love to hear from you if you're such an organization. And one of the things we really want to do is look at what people are doing in the field and what's working and what's not working and share that. So we'd love to hear from those already actively involved in the space about their work that they're doing and what they're learning. And those are things we can profile in our newsletter and on our website. We also will have regular offerings, as Maria laid out, on a variety of topics. So really looking at providing a range of topics so that we meet the needs of the growing network that we have with us. And also to participate in those. We like to hear from, have people share their work via those sessions as well. If you need guidance, you can always email us if you have a question or something, resource you're looking for. You can get in touch and we'll be responding to that. And then as we develop and roll out different communities of practice, we'll be inviting folks to join those. So energy transitions was mentioned, but we'll be looking at that. And that's why it's so important that folks take a few minutes to respond to the survey that we'll be sending out. So we're sure to incorporate what your needs are in our planning. Thanks, Amber.
Great. Barb Columbine has a question: is a guest speaker hub would be useful? Is there one, or a media repository for content related to climate communication? So Barb, we do not have something established for that right now. However, I think a speaker hub is a really amazing idea. So I would encourage anyone on this call, you Barb, in the survey, we're really asking people for what are some of their needs, what are some of their ideas. And so that would be a great spot if you would be willing. It takes 5 minutes, the survey, to add in that and other ideas like that. So thank you. So not in the works right now, but I think it's a great idea. And we'll certainly add that into some of the things we discuss. Okay.
Can I pick up on one in there?
Yeah.
So in terms of this, the question regarding what is paid for. So we are raising funds. So the resource and training hub offerings are accessible. Those are not fee-based. And then we are raising money to be able to work hand in hand with organizations to help develop, implement, and evaluate campaigns and share best practices. For larger, well-funded organizations, we would still welcome fee-based opportunities to collaborate, but we are looking to build up resources that would allow us to support organizations in that way.
Okay, there's a question here from Allison Mostovich. Have there been other studies like the Alberta Narratives Project in other provinces? I would open that up to my fellow colleagues. At this point in time, I am not aware of that particular model, which had a particular kind of methodology based on climate outreaches. Narrative workshop methodology was used. So at this point in time, I'm not aware of that. I will say that I have worked with Iron and Earth. There's a kind of a new conversation about some additional work where we would be borrowing on parts and building on parts of that, but always interested. Can I just ask Kara, Louise, anyone else, Barbara, anyone familiar with that? Leila, yeah.
Well, just to say, I don't know exactly the Alberta project, but in Quebec, with all the researchers that are involved in the communauté de pratique, there has been survey and studies on regional sector to see the narrative in each region of Quebec. So there's the differences between Montreal region and La Beauce or Quebec region and everything. So, and it's updated every year. The difference on geographically the province, it is done, but I didn't compare it with the Alberta project, so I don't know if it's relevant for this question, but things are happening like that in Quebec. Thank you.
Okay, great. We have a question from Angela Merriam. Says a very exciting initiative. I noticed a real focus here on voice and speaking, which is important. I've been working in this space on questions of reciprocity and listening, including in her PhD. Curious if you know, is there anyone else working on this on the other side of the communication equation, how we listen and receive shapes the way that communication happens. So I just thank you so much for that question. I really want to emphasize that a big focus of ours is on exploring risks and co-creating solutions. So it is that listening, the importance of dialogue, and that is a critical part of this. Happy to chat with you more about it. The academic work I'm most familiar with is by Otto Scharmer at the Presencing Institute at MIT. And he actually has studied different levels of listening and how the first one is often to block or confirm what we already know. But he outlined how you could get up to a point of listening into the emergent future, which is really listening into ideas and opportunities we haven't even thought of yet due to the scale of the challenge and the social transformation needed. So I highly recommend Otto Scharmer's work in that regard. And thank you for your question.
Great. There's a question here, Cecile Wilson. Sorry if you've already mentioned this and I have missed it, just so bubbling over excitement about this initiative. Us too. Will you also be looking at how various climate groups communicate with each other? I think this is a great question, something that we were talking about earlier today, and I would invite Dr. Louise Comeau to talk about that and offer some thoughts. Maybe she could speak less to what we have in the works, but if you have any opinions about that.
I do. Maybe I'll say a couple of things. As we were talking about initiatives, one of the things I think would be really important in this work is whether through workshop or other initiatives, surfacing our own biases. For people who consider themselves climate allies, who are working on solutions. I just came out of field listening for a long time in the last couple of years to people in communities who oppose wind projects, who feel they are environmentalists and who are dismissed, I think, often by folks who are working on climate solutions like renewable energy or the shift in electrification and so on. And so this issue of surfacing our own biases and actually listening to our own defense mechanisms. And the one I wanted to share that I think is worth a webinar that shocked me when I dug into the literature was how extensive the social science literature is at debunking the concept of NIMBYism, and has done so for a very, very long time. And so I think that's worth a workshop in itself, because when I raise the question of community opposition to wind power in this case, and people say, oh, it's just NIMBYism, you know, if we give them money, they'll be okay. No. Actually. So I do think there's a lot that we can do to challenge each other and to be more open and to do listening. But I think it starts with surfacing our own biases and putting those right out on the table.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure, Jamie Kirkpatrick, that I understand your question.
Labor materials.
Okay, will you have any materials for use in the workplace shop floor?
Yeah.
Well, Jamie, yes, I apologize. I think that that would be a great conversation for us to have. So very much looking forward to connecting with you or other groups who work within the labor movement. So I think we could have a conversation about that for sure. While I offer a few last minutes for people to field their questions or speak in their questions, I will just let you know. So when this webinar closes, as you know, there will be a screen that pops up that will have a link to the survey. It does take about 5 minutes. It will really help us gauge your interest in and provide an opportunity for feedback on some of the points that we've covered today. gauge your interest in some of the programming that we've been talking about, and also to seek input, for example, a speakers bureau, that kind of thing, into some of the priorities and programming moving forward. And then again, please do sign up and go to our website to sign up for the newsletter, and you can follow us on LinkedIn. So last moments. No
Well,
questions?
I just wanted to throw out, given that in the chat, we're getting so many recommendations on books. I think one of the services we should provide is books to read and that we would share, videos to see or something like that. But right now I've got like 5 different books.
We can add interactive art,
Exactly.
things that we learn about through all of you.
Exactly.
Wonderful. It says that Angela Keller Herzog had a question relating to Indigenous knowledge in the chat. I have not been monitoring the chat. If one of my colleagues has. Thank you.
Yeah,
Bob.
so I think this relates back to the earlier point we just talked on. I think that co-exploring the risks and co-creating the solutions is really critical, and that includes incorporating traditional environmental knowledge. There was a question in the Q&A. We are engaging with Indigenous climate action and the energy transition community of practice, but we really do welcome introduction and collaboration to really expand that part of our work. So thank you for that.
I could add one point in the interest of connecting a few of these questions around listening and books in that last point. I find Dylan Robinson's Hungry Listening a really interesting and challenging book and provocative to think about in this context. And I think the fact that Canada is such a large geographical expanse with many, nations and different peoples, that the place and space-based nature of identity is so key to what we do. So I think that's really part of why it's crucial that so many of us that are here at this seminar get involved and be in touch with us, because we're in different spots, all of us, but it's still not enough.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you everyone for your time. I'm going to open it up to my colleagues to invite them to offer any final remarks or to say goodbye. So Leila, Manon, any final comments or parting words from you?
Well, thank you and bravo to everyone, the members and the partners, and we're open to work together. And if you ever want to see what's happening in the Francophone community, well, just write to us, and we have a website, we have a Facebook page, and we send a press release every day, a press review. So please feel free to call us. It will be a pleasure working with all of you. And voila.
Thank you. Chris, Barbara, any final words or remarks from you?
Nothing for me, just very grateful for everyone that took time out to show up today, and for everyone here in this room. I'm really excited, so let's go.
I just also want to say thank you. I've learned a lot already from reading the chat and listening to everybody, and really look forward to working with this amazing team right here at the table with me, but also with all of you as we go forward. Thanks.
Excellent. Louise, any final remarks?
I just wanted to say that I'm excited about what we're creating, but also I was so pleased to hear the questions around art and the creative side of things. One of the most moving activities I've been involved in the last couple of years has been a program we created at the Conservation Council called From Harm to Harmony. And the artists have really changed me personally and changed the way I engage with our climate work. And so if you want to learn more about that, by all means, check out From Harm to Harmony at the Conservation Council.
Thank you. Maria.
Just letting everybody know that this webinar is being recorded, and then we'll send out a copy of the recording along with I'll be pulling the resources that everybody has been sharing in the chat and the slides and notes from what we have mentioned today. So you will be getting that into your in your inboxes.
Okay, well, I guess before I hand it over to Kara to offer the final words, I would just like to say thank you. And I look forward to the marathon ahead. Over to you, Kara.
Thank you, everyone on the team. Thank you to all of our supporters and partners. Thanks to everyone who joined. We really look forward to hearing from you and collaborating with you over the next bit of time. And I just want to thank again the funders who got us to this point: Clean Economy Fund, Donner Canadian Foundation, McConnell Foundation, Ivy Foundation, Energy Transition Fund. Thank you for your support. We are open to questions, comments, input, and we look forward to hearing from you. We will be sending out the date shortly for the December webinar that was mentioned. So looking forward to seeing you in a few weeks on that. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Au revoir.